Up next on Inside the SCCA, tire management for newbies. Welcome to Inside the SCCA, episode 160-something. I didn't check because this is a recorded episode for the later date. But it's 160-something by the time it airs. We will have completed the Portland Super Tour, and we will be going. I will be getting ready. Actually, the reason we're recording this is because while this is playing, I will be in a car heading to an airport to go to Mid-Ohio for the next Super Tour. But I've been wanting to do this episode for a long time for two reasons. One is because I want to do more tech-type podcasts, tech-type shows with some information, news you can use kind of stuff. And the second reason I'm really excited about this is because this person who is in this box next to me this way, Nicole Stout from Goodyear Racing. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Brian. How are you?
I am fantastic. So I've wanted you on the show for a long time. One, because you're like one of the coolest cats at the racetrack.
Thanks.
And two, I like having people on the show who are smarter than me, which that bar is so low. I never have a problem. No, I'm just kidding. But you are a really, really smart person on a lot of levels, but especially when it comes to tires.
Yes.
So that is why you're here. You are with Goodyear Racing. We're going to get all that in a second. But first, the question that I ask everybody who is the first-time guest on the show, and that is this. How did you get mixed up in this crazy sport that we love?
I was born in it.
No, of course not.
I was. Yes. So I was looking through some pictures the other day, and some of my favorites are the pictures of me in a stroller next to my papa's race car. I have a picture holding a handful of spark plugs. I've always just been involved. My families have always been involved in racing, and it was kind of in my blood.
Okay.
So I know that's like cliche to say, but it really is. I would be fourth generation.
Wow.
Stout in racing. Yeah. So it's been something I've always loved, always wanted to get into. And the way I really did that was through the All-American Soapbox Derby when I was little.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what did Dad drive?
Dad drove stock cars.
Okay. So at what level, at what tracks?
Just short track in Northeast Ohio.
Okay.
Some up in like the Sandusky area, the Lorraine area. They did that. And then my papa drove midgets, and he was in drag racing for a long time.
Wow.
And his dad was in midgets as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I'll be honest, the answer you gave is, I would say, probably 60% of the guests say it was a family thing. I grew up at the racetrack, fill in the blank of however we like to say what it is. I started going to the track when I was 16. My dad was in it. I've told the story so many times. When he's back in the 60s, and Dad had a heart attack, or a heart event, as they called it. And the doctor said, you need a hobby. And I said, okay, I'm going to go racing. And the doctor's like, that's not the hobby I was thinking, but if that relaxes you. But that's how I got started. So for me, it was a family thing as well. So love that answer. So Soapbox Derby, tell me about that.
Yes. So I was 6 years old when I was first introduced to the Soapbox Derby. There was a display at a local mall, and I took the flyer and I squirreled it away in my room. And on my 8th birthday, I brought the flyer down to my dad, and I said, hey, you have to be 8 to race. I'm 8 now. Can we get a car? And we did.
Nice.
So Dad and I worked out in the garage. I raced for 13 years in the Derby.
Wow.
It was still some of my best memories. Some of my best friends came from the Derby, and it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. And as an only child, I was able to spend time with both of my parents at the track.
Very cool.
I learned a lot about competition and being a good winner, but being a good loser as well, which was just as important.
Right.
But that's kind of where the engineering sparked as well, because we had to make the car go fast without an engine.
Right. So So at what point you're 8? I don't know that were you thinking
Mhm.
about engineering at age 8, or how, in that span? When did the whole how do we make it go faster mindset come in?
I was in Indianapolis, of all places, racing derby, and representatives from a college came around and said, "Hey, we have a new program starting in our engineering school. It's motorsports engineering." And, Derby and the people in the Derby might be the best people to come to this program.
Sure.
So I was immediately hooked, immediately interested, sort of started tailoring my classes in high school towards science and math and engineering, and ended up, actually, that's where I went to school. It was a hybrid school between Indiana University and Purdue University in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So, and I got the Bachelor's of Engineering in Motorsports from IPUI, and it was all because of Derby, which is so crazy.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So it's different from the Purdue engineering program, right?
It is the Purdue Engineering
Oh, it is.
program,
Okay.
actually. Yeah,
So
so
there's some
it's
pretty crazy alumni out of that program, aren't there?
yeah, there are. It's kind of fun to see if I'm walking through a paddock, I know this person, he was in my vehicle dynamics class, or the person on TV, I took aero with her.
Uh-huh.
So we're all splattered throughout the paddocks now, and it's pretty cool.
And there's also some pretty famous alums too, correct?
Some are famous. I think Ryan Newman would
Uh-huh.
be one of the most famous.
Right.
He was a really big proponent of the program.
Yeah, I talked with him several times over the years, and he would immediately want to talk about the engineering on the car. He didn't want
Yes.
to talk about driving. Always wanted to
Yep.
talk about this doodad or that doodad. And as a guy who basically learned to wrench on cars by working on my dad's race cars, I just love that kind of stuff. So that was a ton of fun. So you go to the IU the Purdue program, and
Mhm.
what's the percentage of male to female in that program?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Approximately, when you were there.
Probably 1 in 15 students are
Wow.
female.
Yeah.
So, and it also has a lot of attrition, I
Okay.
suppose. I started with a class of 100 and
Okay.
I graduated with 6.
Wow. Why is that?
So, a lot of people see the motorsports and not the engineering.
Okay.
So it's hardcore calculus and
Right.
physics, and it's everything engineering. And some people are just better suited in other roles in motorsports than
Right.
engineering.
Right.
So yeah, I graduated with 6. I was the only girl in my graduating
Well,
class.
that was my next
So
question. Of one of
yeah,
100, if you're one of every 15, there are probably what six gals maybe.
yeah. So, and
And
probably even less when I was in school, more
okay.
now.
Okay.
Definitely more now. It's been wonderful to see the growth of women, not only in the school program, but in motorsports in general.
Right. Right. Heck of an accomplishment, whether you're a lady or not, right?
Heck yeah. No, totally.
So when you're one of 6 graduates, you've got basically the motorsports world at your fingertips, right? I,
We
ha-
do.
I
Yes.
have to
And
imagine that you guys are pretty well sought out, right?
no, absolutely. If you go to a career fair, Penske's not going to be at the career fair looking for people. We go to Penske or they come and select us, which is pretty cool. And being in Indianapolis, it was very easy to
Sure.
get internships and opportunities to even just, be a weekend warrior with a team.
Right. So, did you go right from the program to Goodyear, or were there steps between the
I did
college and
not.
Goodyear?
Yeah, I did not. Well, I guess I went right from the program to Goodyear, but while I was still in school, I did internships.
Okay.
So a big part of the motorsports engineering program were the internships you could get through faculty connections and just being in the area. For instance, my one professor, Chris, he worked with Schmidt Peterson in IndyCar
Mhm.
and Indy Lights. And my other professor, main professor Andy, he was he was an aerodynamicist in Formula One.
Wow.
So he was able to get you a lot of connections. And then one of the biggest proponents of the program, Terry Talbert Hatch, she was able to help me get an internship with IndyCar. So I was 19 years old working for IndyCar as a tech inspector, rule enforcer, worked on pit road, and it was amazing.
Nice.
So I worked the month of May in Indianapolis. I did everything from making sure the dies fit on the car to chatting with the engineers, rolling the cars over the scales. And I sat on pit road for the 500 that year. So
I got the sense that IndyCar were more open to female mechanics and engineers earlier on than many of the other series. And is that because of their relationship with this program and their ability to get people?
I would agree with, your thoughts on that. I do think that females were in that paddock before anywhere else. But I don't know if it's a direct link.
Okay.
So, unfortunately.
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
Do you have a story from that first internship that month of May that you can tell?
Actually, yeah. So it was our jobs to kind of bring people in after they qualified and kind of impound their cars to
Right.
make sure if they were in the top 9, they weren't touching their cars afterwards. And as my job as a tech, I had to stand there and the cars were coming in hot down pit road towards me. And I'd point to, right in front of my feet. And I'm like, hey, I need the nose of the car right here so I can see everything at all times. And Justin Wilson, of all people, came in hot and nudged me with the nose of his car and got out, took his helmet off, and laughed hysterically. He thought it was the funniest thing that I was so scared because I didn't want to move.
Sure.
And he hit me with his car. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So from school, you go to Goodyear. What was your initial role when you got to Goodyear?
So I did 3 internships at Goodyear before I hired in full-time as the liaison between our Innovation Center Manufacturing in Akron and the NASCAR Design and Development Group. So that person was the go-between to help make what the designers on the NASCAR tire wanted happen in our plant in Akron.
Okay.
So I did that for about a year. But I also got to travel some in that role as well, which is what I really wanted in racing, was to go out and
Sure.
see it and smell it and hear it. And then from there, I moved into a designer role in the NASCAR group. And about 6 months after that, the role of sports car engineer opened. And I was still a bit of a newbie, but I had done an internship in the sports and drag racing group. So I kind of knew the people, I knew the work, and it felt like a better fit for me. So I applied and moved over there to the sports car group where I'm currently at in January of 2020 of all times.
Of course.
So I had 2 months of that under my belt. We went on furlough when the whole world shut down,
Right.
and then quickly picked right back up with racing and traveling in June.
Yeah, because racing was one of the first sports to get back to doing its thing at that point in time, because what we do is mostly outdoors.
Yeah,
and
we're very lucky.
We kind of found ways to tiptoe and tap dance around all of the rules and still get on TV and do all of that kind of stuff, How weird were you traveling at that time with the
traveling
program?
Oh yeah.
So, growing up at the racetrack, going to Indy in the month of May, hundreds of thousands of people at Indy at a race, not so many at NASCAR races, but what was it like to be at a pro level race with no fans in the stands?
It was eerily quiet.
Yeah.
Eerily quiet. But happy to be there, no less.
Sure. Because when we're at the racetrack, and even when there's no cars on the track at a pro event, there's just constant chatter and noise, and there's music playing and the bands and there's always stuff going on. It's never quiet. It reminds me a little bit of, I was in New York City on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And we had to work. I was at work when just before 9/11. I was on my way to work when the first planes hit the Twin Towers. And I was working for CBS News, so we had to stay at work because if we left Manhattan, we couldn't come back. If you went out, we lived in Brooklyn. So if you were on the island, they closed all the bridges and tunnels.
Sure.
So if you were on the island and you left the island, you couldn't come back on the island.
Wow.
And if you weren't at work, you couldn't get to work. So those of us who were actually on the island ended up working some crazy hours, which is nothing compared to the rescue workers and all of the other folks. But this is a situation we were in. And I remember when we finally got to go and get off for a bit of time, we were given hotels in the city because we couldn't leave and come back. But all of the taxi cabs had left the island to take people home on 9/11 and couldn't get back in. So we actually had to walk to our hotel, which was from 57th and 11th over to Times Square. We were at the Times Square Hilton. Or was it the Marriott? But whatever it was. Anyway, but I remember walking, and it was so quiet in Manhattan that I heard crickets.
Oh, wow.
There are actually crickets in Manhattan.
I didn't know that.
Neither did I. And,
Wow.
and you would never hear that ever, because even at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's taxi cabs and buses and all this stuff going on.
Absolutely. And people and music, of course.
I mean, it was like so surreal and eerie. I kind of imagine that being at a racetrack after, right after COVID unlocked for motorsports was kind of like that, right?
Yeah, I would happen to agree.
Wow. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. So, and now that you're part of the sports car group,
Yes.
what do you do? What does a day in the life of Nicole Stout look like when you're not at the racetrack?
Oh, goodness gracious. It is honestly, and again, another cliche, it is putting out fires.
Yeah.
So we have the opportunity to be really hands-on with building our tires. So in Akron, and you've been,
I have.
you've got, the 3 levels of ICM. The factory is right below me. I sit on level 4. So I can go down at any time and see, the extruders producing the treads. I can see people cutting the materials and building the tires and getting inspected. So I can see all of that. So a lot of fires, putting out fires downstairs. There's also a lot of test planning, test writing, writing the specifications for the tires, because I do go in and manipulate what materials and what angles and lengths and widths all of the materials are for the tires. A lot of times I will, let's see, what else do I do at the track? Reach out to customers. I do a lot of customer relationship things at the office, whether it's answering emails or answering phone calls. So I think, and expense reports, of course. Expense reports.
So the tires on my car, my street car,
Okay.
are those made by a machine, right?
Yes, those are made by a machine. But all of the race tires, so every single NASCAR tire, every single sports car tire, and every single NHRA Goodyear tire is made by hand.
Right. I was fortunate enough to come visit you guys back in December, and I got the mini tour, because I understand the real tour is like 18 hours long.
It's a doozy.
But I got the mini tour, and the thing that I was absolutely baffled by is that every race tire, right from b-spec up to NASCAR and the vintage IndyCar and Formula One tires that you guys make, they're all made by hand.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible.
It is nuts. I mean, and the volume. Do you know off the top of your head how many racing application tires come out of Goodyear every year?
Every year, I don't have a good number of. I'm trying to think. We're about 20 per shift, 3 shifts a day, 5 days a week, probably 48 weeks a year.
Right.
So math.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, to support every NASCAR race with enough tires plus some.
Yeah.
SCCA with whatever everybody needs there, and then NHRA with all of the big mows for Top Fuel and Funny Car. And quite a few.
And do you guys make the Mickey Thompsons also? Because I know you own Mickey Thompson, right?
Mickey Thompsons. Yes. So when we acquired Cooper, Mickey Thompson was one of Cooper's brands.
Right.
So yes. So Mickey Thompson and Avon both.
Right.
So, but yeah, we make one Mickey Thompson drag front runner in Akron right now.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool. I had the opportunity in December as well to build a tire myself.
Yeah.
And it was so stinking cool. It was a big rear tire for a vintage Indy car.
Okay.
She's in my office. She's over here. I named her Roberta, and she's pretty great. But it totally changed how I see the builders downstairs,
Right.
the building process, and the engineering and design process. Honestly, there's definitely things I could design differently to make building the tire easier.
Sure. So
No, that was
so
changing.
not only so you're actually about getting in the factory and building the tire itself.
Yes, absolutely. I was able to build a tire. It was so cool.
That's awesome. That is
Mm-hmm.
so awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I was really kind of blown away by how much hands-on, right down to painting the dang yellow Goodyear or white Goodyear if it's a vintage tire,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That's done by hand.
Yes, and it's honestly, it's all made with love. Everybody that you talk to down in the factory is very proud of the product that we produce. One of my favorite things with the tires, if you look inside every single Goodyear tire, you'll see a proudly made by sticker.
Uh-huh.
So you can track back who makes that tire.
Cool. And it's got what, initials or an ID number or something?
It would be like N Stout, so
Okay,
first
yeah.
initial, last name. So it's really cool. I was able to put that on my tire too.
Hold on one second. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I got one
it's in there
behind me.
somewhere.
I got one behind me. So,
Yep.
for those of you who may have not heard the story, this tire was off the Garage 56 car, actually on track at Le Mans. Up here, there's actually still Le Mans flag on the tire, which is beyond cool. So, thank you.
So cool.
Thank you to you and Jay for making that whole thing come together. So,
Of course.
all right. So, what is the best and the worst part of your job?
Oh, goodness gracious.
And on the worst part, nobody's listening. It's just you and me. No one's going to see this.
I think the worst part of my job is when I'm working with a customer and, there's a corner they can't figure out or a setup thing they can't figure out. And I've used every tool in my tool belt to help them.
Right.
And I just can't.
Yeah.
That's hard. But then the best part of my job goes right back to the customer. It's when, they're standing on the podium and I was that much of their success.
Yeah.
That feels really, really cool. I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's really, really neat.
I would have thought maybe the worst part was when a tire goes down and a car's in the lead. And it's probably nothing that you've done. It's often happenstance. The cars run over something on the track.
Yes.
But I bet you that's probably 98% of it. But sometimes the tire just fails.
I would agree with that. I've had my fair share of challenging issues at the track, technical reasons why. But that always makes me stronger as an engineer and the Goodyear Racing team stronger as a team. So do I want those? No. Or am I thankful for them? Yes. So do I want them to happen? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
so
definitely. All right, before we get on to the technical side of this, well, you know what? Before we do that, I always hate asking this question because I like to forget about barriers broken and all of that kind of stuff, but it's kind of hard to do that. You are in, no doubt, a guy's sport. Which
100%, yes.
And today it's a whole lot better than it was 35 years ago when I started. Yeah, 35 years. There was rarely the ladies involved in the sport in the driver's seat. Rarely would you see ladies with a wrench. It was the ladies were there to support their guys. That has changed, not as much as it should, but it's changing, and it's changing for the better. How difficult, or what are the challenges that you've had because of that situation for you?
On more than one occasion, I've had racers look at me and ask if they can talk to the engineer. And I'm like, hi, it's me. I'm the engineer. But as I've gotten to be around the track a little more, people have recognized me and kind of know my role at the track. So that's definitely died down a little bit. You have your fair share of creeps sometimes. Sure. So that's a little rough to get over. But to be completely honest, the SCCA and HSR and other sanctioning bodies that I support I've run into very few issues with being a female.
Good.
So I think as I've earned people's trust, which I mean could be with a male engineer
Sure.
as well, it's definitely bonded me with my customers.
Sure.
So I was thinking about this today, which is kind of funny. Customers of ours, like Troy Ermish or Scotty B. White, Chris Evans, they're all girl dads.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt like I've had a good relationship with them faster.
Sure.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. But no, I think, you can bend over and take my tire temps anytime has been said to me once or twice.
Oh my God.
So
that's just, oh gosh, that makes me mad.
yeah. So, but that was a long time ago in my career, 6.5-year career already, which is crazy.
Well, I would like to think that came more from like pro races with fans rather than actual people involved in the sport in the paddock.
And absolutely. The people who are in motorsports are in motorsports to win and be competitive.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you are, a man, a woman, or a puppy. If you're going to make the car go fast, that's what they want.
Right. Right. And I would hope that most 99% of the time when they came and asked for the engineer and then you said it was you, that was like, oh gosh, I'm sorry, let's talk. And it wasn't I would like to think that maybe not 90, but most of the time.
Yeah, there'd be correction. There'd be some apologetic looks. But there's honestly still some people, like if it's Jay and I who walk over, they'll still just talk to Jay.
Right.
And, I'll take it in and kind of answer because, working with Jay so frequently, he knows, I'm the engineer. He'll let me answer those questions. Right. So it's kind of funny. They'll still talk to him, but I'll still answer.
Right.
So.
Right. Hey, folks, Jay's a great guy. She's smarter than Jay.
And again, for those in the back, no.
She's smarter than Jay. No.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm a nobody in an engine who likes to play amateur engineer on the weekends. That's what I tell people. So I get it. Lastly, before we get into the teaching part of this, we have in the club a new spec tire manufacturer for the first time this year. It's the b-spec tire, and it would be Goodyear.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your role before we get to the track part, your role in the tires, development of the tires that are on the b-spec cars right now.
Sure. So the b-spec tire was one of the first tires that we brought back in Goodyear's DOT line. So back in 2012, people across the bridge, which would be what we call like the finance people in Akron, decided that it was no longer good for Goodyear to be in the DOT market. We kind of went away from sports car racing for a little bit. And when we came back with a vengeance, and we realized that we did need this DOT offering. So that was honestly right about when I started in January of 2020. And the project was for me to make the materials more modern, to make it able to use steel in the factory again. And it was an incredible feat for not only myself, but the whole team in general and the factory too. So I was able to, bring that tire back. And it honestly was my first tire, the first tire that my name was on. I'm super proud of it, to the point where I have a picture of it on my fridge at home.
Nice.
It's just, it's my little tire baby. And I love being in the b-spec group. I love being part of that community. And I think it was a perfect partnership with Goodyear and the SCCA and b-spec. It's just been fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm hearing from the drivers that they're pretty darn happy with the product. So that's a good thing, right?
Yes. I got a text this weekend from somebody, I think they were racing a Blackhawk, and they said that they were very happy with my handiwork. Nice. And getting texts like that on a Sunday evening just makes my heart happy.
Very cool. Very cool. So what do you do at an SCCA race when you're there?
Oh, goodness. So working at the SCCA races happened to be probably my favorite part of the job. Maybe I was fibbing a little bit earlier. Being out the track is pretty great. So a big part of my job at the track is just customer support. So that's, being down on pit road, taking tire temps, taking tire pressures, recommending setup changes for the drivers and their cars to better optimize the use of the tire. I will also try to help customers choose the right compound for their car, the right type of tire, whether it's a DOT, a radial, or a bias tire, what's going to help them make the best choice and go fastest. And I think a lot of it is just general support. You're doing great. We're going to go out there. We're going to go get this. Your tires are good. You've managed them well. Just kind of being there and being part of the team.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Before we go to the teaching portion of the class, I want to just do a little bit of business here, so stick with me for 1 second. I want to thank all of the people who helped me put this on, and that would be Ray Esports Racing, which is over my shoulder. You'll see the logos. I think it's that way. Yep, it's over that way. Ray Esports, they are the official sim racing league of the Inside the SCCA podcast. They also run the unofficial SCCA sim racing leagues. They have races on Tuesdays and Saturdays and Sundays, and I love racing with those folks because if you ever done sim racing at all, you realize that some of the people aren't out there to actually race like we do on the racetrack, and they just want to run people over. Most of the people in Ray's esports leagues are SCCA folks, and we try to act like we're actually racing, so there's a lot less, not none, but a lot less carnage for those races, and it's a lot more true to life for us on that. Also, Solo Performance Specialties, they are there. Well, let's talk about Racekeeper, and then we'll go back since the Racekeeper logo popped up. Racekeeper is the official in-car camera of Inside the SCCA. You saw that handiwork for all of my Solo Nationals video. Thank you to all of those folks. They have awesome products that work on your cars, and they meet the requirements for the SCCA rule book for having forward and rearward facing tires. So check those folks out. And then Solo Performance Specialties, if you ever go to a Solo Nationals tour event, they're at most of those, and definitely at Solo Nationals. Check out Dave and his crew. They also have a tire trailer there and all that other fun stuff. But thank you to all of those folks for being part of our team here. All of their information is in our show notes down below, and hit them up for stuff. And Solo Performance Specialties also sells a bunch of other stuff, helmets and gear like that. So check them out as well. So lastly, like, subscribe, smash the like button, subscribe. We really, really appreciate that. That helps with the algorithms, and it's all about the algorithms. And someone who actually knows what an algorithm is would be Nicole Stout.
Yes, quite a few, unfortunately.
I love it. I love it. So, all right. So now we're back for the part of the show, the teaching portion of the show. I've wanted to do this, and in 160 some episodes, I really haven't had a chance to do a lot of it. We've done episodes on how to participate in things and how to be a worker and all that kind of stuff, but we haven't done a lot of tech how-tos. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity to do our first tech how-to episode. No pressure at all. So let's pretend for a second, which is not a far cry pretending on this one. I'm a newbie, and I've just gotten involved in this sport, and I have no idea what to do with my tires. And gosh darn it, tires are expensive, so I don't want to spend a lot of money on them. And if I do, I want them to last, and I want to kind of learn how to manage them. So let's start with that idea, and let's just say b-spec, because you know a little bit about those. But a lot of the concepts I think we're going to talk about will be kind of generic for all newbies to manage tires, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So I got a brand new set of tires, sticker tires, because sticker tires are cool, because that's what we heard about on TV. Putting a brand new set of stickers on, those are cool. By the way, stickers don't last very long. They come off in like a half a lap.
They do.
They do, very, very fast. But if I'm a new guy or gal and I'm going out for the first time on a set of sticker tires, what should I do to help me make those tires first last a long time?
So I think tire management is a strange combination of strategy and skill. So I think if you're a newbie, I'd want to read up on the strategy. So the first thing I would recommend to make the tire last a long time is the proper warm-up. So that first time out on the track, you don't want to go and, really just smash those tires really, really hard. My recommendation would be to bring them up to temperature slowly. So maybe that first lap and that second lap is a little bit, maybe 75% of what you think you can do out on the track. And then, that third, the fourth, you're kind of ramping up. You're going around the corners a little bit faster. You're hitting those apexes. But I think if you go, straight out there and really spin those tires, you're not going to get the longevity out of them.
Right. Right.
So something else I think would be super important is using the proper pressure.
Okay.
So, and it's just like your street car, that you're going to get the most miles and best fuel economy out of your street car if you use the proper tire pressure. So I know for myself, if you're my new customer, Ryan, I would have a recommendation for you for pressures to start at and pressures to come in at. So that would be a key as well.
So who do I talk to find out what pressures to start with? Because
the engineer
I can
of the
tell,
tire, yeah.
I can tell you, because I can walk up and down the paddock.
You could.
And
I could do that.
I could ask every driver out there.
Yes.
And if I ask 10 drivers, I am pretty certain you're probably going to get 7 different answers.
I would agree with that. So I would, kind of do the short. Even in b-spec, honestly, it's such a good community. I would ask other b-spec drivers, but I would also just go straight to your tire manufacturer. So I know Goodyear has a catalog on the webs or on Goodyear, racegoodyear.com, that has all of our recommendations. Or if you're going with another tire manufacturer, they probably have something similar, or a rep at the track that would help you.
Right, right. And of course, whatever recommendations that you're given are kind of a starting point, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the recommendations, they vary by track, they vary by weather conditions, by driver, by car, by preference. It's kind of just in the ballpark, and exactly that, a recommendation. So everybody's going to be a little bit different, and especially with, the depth and the breadth of cars that you see in the SCCA, and even just in b-spec in general, maybe a Mini is going to be a little different than a Honda Fit.
Sure, sure. How much does a pound of pressure change a tire?
It changes it a lot. It changes the footprint. It changes the spring rate, just kind of the response, the steering response. Quantitatively, I could give you a number. I would be able to give that to you, but it's going to vary by tire,
Sure.
tire size, tire type.
Sure.
But no, it is a big difference. And air pressure is going to change whether it's change the performance of both a new tire and of a scuffed or a used tire. So if you think of like your old favorite shirt, how the fabric gets softer and softer.
Right.
A tire has fabric inside, and as it gets used, it's also going to get softer and softer. So you're going to have to make changes with air pressure to account for that as well.
So the older the tire, when I say older, I'm not talking about the age of the tire from a chronological standpoint, but for the amount of wear on a particular tire, you might not start a session with the same pressure on a sticker set of tires than on a used set of tires.
Correct. Yes.
Wow. Somehow that makes perfect sense to me, but I've learned something.
There you go. No, we had a pretty comprehensive study done with Big Mo's, the big giant tires that you see on top of the Top Fuel and funny cars. It had, it was a vast difference between a first run on that tire to the 10th run on that tire.
So now we're newbies. We don't have a lot of money, so we don't, or let's just assume we don't have a lot of money. There are some people who are newbies and might have all the money in the world and can spend all day. But so heat cycles. Can you talk to me a little bit about heat cycles?
So as you heat cycle a tire, it cooks the tire over and over again. It's kind of like a twice baked potato. As weird as that is, you know what I mean? You're just heating it up more and more and differently, and it's going to change the chemical composition of the tire. So a sticker tire, again, is going to be different than a second heat cycle, a third heat cycle, a fourth heat cycle. And at some point, that tire is going to be done. It's going to be cooked.
So I was taught, and you're going to tell me whether I was taught properly, because I was not taught from an engineer that I don't believe, that the first heat cycle is the most important heat cycle. And that if you run a tire once and you then give it a 24-hour cool down before you run it again, that will extend the life of the tire longer than if you were to run that sticker set of tires for the first 4 sessions of the day without a full 24-hour cool down, and then that will have a shorter lifespan in that tire. Is that right?
I don't know if right would be the correct word. That is my stance on the idea. But some engineers might think differently.
Okay.
But I am proponent of the let it sit for 24 hours, especially if you're looking more as a budget friendly, longevity point of view.
Sure. And then the second, third, fourth, is it as important for those subsequent heat cycles to let it sit for 24 hours?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think it's really that first one. And again, you want to make sure that you're breaking it in nicely, gently.
Right.
And then letting it sit. But the second, third, and fourth, I think, are going to get about the same as that second.
So we hear about when we watch a pro race, watch a Formula One race or an IndyCar race, that the tires have they're fastest in like the second lap. Is that the case with the type of tires that we use in club racing? And does that mean that they're junk on lap 3 and beyond?
So again, and it really depends on the tire.
Okay.
So, and it's kind of engineering strategy as well. Does, the team want to run a tire where you're going to go out there, you're going to get in front of the field, and then the tire is going to slow up a little bit? Do you want to design a tire that's going to be consistent every single lap, but maybe not the fastest at the beginning? Or do you want to design a tire that's going to be the fastest at the end when everybody else's tire is falling off? So I think it's a little bit different for everybody. For a NASCAR tire, where it is a spec tire, it is the second or third lap on that tire that is the fastest. But in spec racing, I think it could be all over the board.
Sure. And we can manage that a little bit in how we drive the tire too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are more of a smooth driving style and a consistent driving style person, I think you can almost predict or control when that fast lap is going to be. But if you're a go out there and go like hell type of person, your fastest lap is going to be at the beginning of the race.
Sure. So how do we know when our tires are done? I mean, obviously there's the seat of the pants, I think once you get, but newbies don't have that seat of the pants,
Very true.
I've got a lot of time on tires, and I'm probably not as good as people who have a lot more time than me, but I can feel when a tire's going off.
Sure.
Is there
I think there's
a magic way to learn this?
I do think it's experience, it's seat time. But other than that, I think honestly, lap times.
Sure.
You'll know when the tire is done, when you've slowed down a little bit, but also by the wear indicators on the tire. If you're out of tread, it's usually a pretty good indication that you need a new one.
But they're just slick tires when you're out of tread, and that should be faster, right?
Yeah, right. Sure. So no, I think honestly, it's more of a, how does it feel? Does it feel a little greasy? Can you just tell a difference from when you started using it to how you're using it now? The lap times and then the wear indications.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about rain tires.
Okay.
Now I'm in Southern California. A lot of the people I race out here don't even own rain tires.
Right.
That's a mistake. But so I have 2 questions on the rain tires. If you're in an area where you don't get a lot of rain, and you buy a set of rain tires, and they sit in the trailer, or even worse, on top of the closed open trailer, because we don't have any money, because we're poor racers, and they've been in the sun, but they've never been on the racetrack because you don't get much rain. How do you keep a set of tires fresh, and how long before, if you don't use them much, do you just kind of have to chuck them?
So,
or how do you measure it?
Okay. No, we always joke that you should store tires and rain tires like you store wine. So in a cool, dark place. So if you can bring them inside, put them in a basement, keeping them in the trailer, they'd probably bake a little bit in Southern California, but keep it away from like the UV lights, keep it away from, major temperature changes. That would be one recommendation. Also to extend the life of a tire, you can boat wrap it. To try to keep everything inside and keep the light from getting to it. So those would be my recommendations to kind of keep them fresh. Anywhere between probably 3.5 to 5 years
really?
is when I would say, hey, maybe not the best idea to run.
I'm glad when you said like wine, and then you said cool, dry place, because we're poor, so we're natty light drinkers. We're not wine drinkers. So you had to explain that, but I'm just kidding. That makes sense. I mean, keep it out of the sun, keep it cool and dry. That all makes sense. Is there a way you can test the rubber on a tire to tell you? I've seen stuff like that. Is like the softness if you put your fingernail into it, and it's all these crazy old wives' tales.
Honestly, no.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that. But visually, I think more so is what you would see if the tire is donezo and is ready for retirement, no pun intended. It will have some sort of like age cracking on it, which will be seen when it's going to be mounted. So a lot of times our wonderful crew at the track will say, hey, Nicole, we've got this tire. Do you recommend the customer gets a new one? And it'll be because it's kind of cracked and, maybe a little bit of brownish where the chemicals and the oils come to the top of the tire. But then it's probably time for a new one.
Okay. When I'm watching a pro race, I see them drive into the pits, and then everybody descends in the car and they come out and they're poking these things in the tires. What are they doing? And so usually, and what can I learn from that?
That would be a pyrometer.
Ah.
Yes, that would be a pyrometer taking the tire temperatures. Okay. And we don't just do it at the surface. We poke it into the tire to get the carcass temperatures. So you've got the carcass of the tire and then it's covered with the tread. So just a bit of a more accurate temperature. And with tire temperatures, you can adjust, your setup of your car, including and not limited to amber. Some of your pressure settings can be adjusted as well through temperatures. They may also be taking pressures when they come in, to see if they want to bleed them down. If a driver is happier towards the beginning when maybe not so much of air is in the tire, or towards the end, maybe adding more air to the tire. But that's usually, or even just a visual check on the tire can happen during pit stops. I did that at Le Mans. Every 3 stints, I would do a visual check of the tire to make sure that it was okay. So just kind of checking in on the tire, getting that data. So, but it is important that you come in hot though. Making sure that you're still following pit road speed, but coming in hot is going to get you the most accurate data.
Right. So, when I'm going out on my first lap, can I weave back and forth, and does that do anything?
No, it does not. It cleans off the tires. So maybe if you had run over some little pebbles or some gravel, they'd get your tires all clean, but into heating up the tire, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm trying to
my recommendation. Go ahead.
I'm trying to dispel all the myths here in one episode.
Yeah, no. My recommendation would be to get a good acceleration and then a good braking. And you're kind of heating the tire using the brakes more so. So you're going to heat the tire from the inside out instead of cooking just the top of the tire.
Okay. That makes more sense. There
you go.
Let me go back to tire pressures for a second. When we're setting tire pressures cold, we are also anticipating them heating up.
Yes.
And then when the tires heat up, the pressure changes.
Yes.
And that's why we want to check the pressures when we come off the racetrack, correct?
Correct.
So we're really trying to find the optimal hot tire pressures.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And And in a B-spec car, let's use this as an example, where you've got one spec tire, but you're using them on a Mini and a Honda Fit and a Mazda.
Mhm.
Not all three of those cars necessarily will create as much tire temperature, which would then change the pressures properly. So it might be that the same operating temperature will, where the operating pressure would be good amongst different tires across different
Mhm.
cars, but you might have to start at a different pressure per car to get to that
Yes.
same optimal pressure, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there's some drivers that build pressure, more pressure than others. So you'd have, the more gentle drivers like myself. I would be a gentle driver. I would start my tire pressure a little bit higher than, say, your front runners of B-spec or GT1 or P1. They're probably going to start a little bit lower because their driving style is going to heat the tire up faster, and when the heat goes up, the pressure goes up. So that's why it
Oh,
goes back to the recommendations. It's just a ballpark, because I've got to cover a lot of different people.
so if there are two drivers, different
Mm-hmm.
drivers in the same car, let's
Mm-hmm.
pick the Mini or whatever, and with the same tire,
Mm-hmm.
both turning identical fast lap times,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible that one of those drivers will have different heat in their tires because they're driving the car differently, even though they're both driving the heck out of the race car, but they're driving it
Yep,
differently.
absolutely.
Wow. See, I'm learning
Yeah.
so
So
much.
so if you go into a corner differently, if you're one that waits as long as you possibly can to just jam on the brakes, you're going to heat up the tire differently than someone who's a little bit more consistent, a little bit more gentle per se. So yeah, definitely different recommendations for those two guys.
So you really can't always just lift someone else's. That, I guess that makes more sense why when you've got, like in let's say Formula One, when you've got two
Mhm.
cars, two drivers on the same team, that they might just need different setups because one does it one way and one does it another way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I
Even
agree
even
completely.
to the tire pressures. That's something I had never contemplated before this conversation.
Yep.
That's pretty cool to
And
know.
some people might like the feel of tires differently.
Sure.
Somebody might like it where the spring rate is higher, so
Right.
you have more air in the tire, or
That
they
makes
like the
sense
lower
too.
spring rate, so you have less air in the tire. So it's magic.
Yeah. Oh, that's not what an engineer's supposed to say. You're supposed to
But
say
it
it's
is.
science.
Well, there's a lot of science. It's science-based magic.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Um, what is the most often question you get from a new racer when they come talk to you?
Probably the number of heat cycles, I think, would be the most
Okay.
often question. Um, that was weird. That would be the most often asked. Probably heat cycles or optimal like temperature range.
Okay.
How much should I heat up the tire? And it's so hard because I don't have an answer for that. I don't want it to be 200 degrees on the dot. A gradient is what I usually like to see on the tire,
Sure.
and the gradient's more important than the top temperature. So that one's probably a good one. Um, Pressure, camber settings,
Sure.
just kind of like the generalities of how to use this tire.
What's the biggest mistake newbies make with their tires besides flat spotting?
Ooh, flat spotting's a good one. The biggest mistake.
I just tell people when they flat spot their tires, then to just flat spot it like 7 or 8 more times so that you have enough flat spots all the way around, and then it kind of evens itself
Yes.
out, right?
No, absolutely. Oh goodness, that's a hard question, Brian.
Well, that's my
Um,
job to ask the hard
I
questions.
know. I think the biggest mistake would be, that one's really hard. I think probably not listening to recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds a little harsh. But we have the recommendations for a reason. We've done the testing, and we've seen it on track and in the lab, and you're not going to make the best out of the tire if you don't take the recommendations.
Yeah. Is it worse to go too low on the recommendations or too high? Or does it not matter?
Honestly, both are bad.
Okay.
Too low, you can damage the construction of the tire,
Right.
which you see a lot of in NASCAR racing. But even too high, it's, you're going to be racing on a balloon, which wouldn't be uncomfortable or would be comfortable.
Right.
So there really is kind of that happy medium, that hard target that you are trying to hit. It's, like I said, science-based magic.
Nice. Is there any question I have not asked that I should have asked?
I don't think so. I do have on my little notes here, because I am an engineer, that another big part of tire management is proper compound selection for the track you're going to.
Sure.
So I did kind of want to touch on that. I'm not the compounder, but I have picked up a little bit of compounding in my 6.5 years. So, Watkins Glen is usually historically hard on tires, or Road America just got repaved. Mid-Ohio just got repaved. So you've got to be able to go in there with some options if tire wear is a little bit rougher than what you had expected. So choosing the right compound is important for tire management.
What if you're on a spec tire and you don't have a choice?
Ooh, good choice. Then honestly, a spec tire is designed differently than an open competition tire. A spec tire, we have all of that top of mind when we're designing it, that it does need to work at every single track, on every single car, and every single application. So if you're on a spec tire, listen to the recommendations. If you are not, think about your choices before you go to the track.
Got it. Well, you know what? This has been spectacular. And maybe we'll have you back. Well, we'll definitely have you back. But we'll do a tire management for surly old veterans next.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. And that's where you just say, "Shut up and do what I say. Shut up and do what I say." Don't think, right?
I wish I could say that.
I love it. So cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nicole Stout.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Goodyear Racing Engineer Extraordinaire. And I will see you. Well, we're recording this, but I will have just seen you in Portland, and then I will see you again at Mid-Ohio.
Yes.
Mid-Ohio is practically a home race for you, right?
It is. I get to sleep in my own bed for Mid-Ohio.
That is awesome.
So, yeah, it is a perk for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it, and we are always happy to have someone with smarts on the show to teach us how to do things the right way. So. All right, that is going to do it for another episode of Inside the SCCA. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the Racing Wire Podcast Network so you won't miss any episodes. You can do so and check on both our YouTube channel, which is the Racing Network, and the Racing Wire Podcast Network. It would also be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. Follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is. Leave us a question on Twitter. It is @RacingWireNet. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Belansky. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.
I'm Abby Shear, and when I'm on my way to an autocross, I listen to the Inside the SCCA podcast.
Inside the SCCA is a presentation of the Racing Wire Podcast Network and Rule 15 Productions. This podcast is not affiliated with, endorsed, or sponsored by the Sports Car Club of America. The views expressed within are those of the host and our guests, and not that of the SCCA.